Usually when I create a build, I create it for my playstyle, and that is generally to survive in outnumbered situations because I don't always run with a group. I sometimes run solo, and sometimes I do run in a team, so maybe I want a little bit more damage and kill potential. And I also like to have mobility because I like to use terrain, and that's something that gives me an advantage over other players. So when I make a build, it generally fits into that playstyle. This build is different than that. It has all the Condi cleanse and mobility, but the playstyle is a lot different. So my normal builds, they're kind of like if you're playing a first-person shooter game, you know, most people will run around and try to shoot people and get kills. This build is that dude who sits in the corner and waits for someone to run by and then shoots them. That's right, this is a camper build. So this is the immobilized Druid, and it makes use of traps and immobilize to get kills on people after baiting out all their stun breaks or their Condi cleanse. And it has a lot of CC as well, so it's really good at locking down single targets and basically focusing someone down. And it's also very good at escaping and trolling people, so that's why I call it a little bit of a different playstyle. It's very good at defending camps, not so much at aggressing for kills on players who don't want to fight you. But at the same time, if they don't have Condi cleanse and you get a good immob on them, then they can't run away. And it's also very useful in supporting your teammates because it has a lot of healing power. So Druid is a kind of supportish class, but this is a less supportive version of a Druid than you would think. So it does have some support still with healing power. And another thing is that World vs. World doesn't really nerf Druid as hard as PvP does. I was really surprised because Druid actually has a 10-second Celestial Avatar cooldown in World v World. That's pretty insane because there are so many traits that proc based on entering and leaving Celestial Avatar. So it gives you a lot more sustain. And you have stuff like the Seed, which has a triple Condi cleanse that does a single Condi cleanse in PvP. So yeah, Druid is very overpowered in my opinion in World vs. World. But anyways, let's just go over the traits. So I take Druid, Wilderness Survival, Skirmishing. In Druid, you will gain the ability to enter Celestial Avatar, and that means it's kind of like a Necromancer Shroud, but you require not only the cooldown of the skill to be up, but you also require a resource, so that's why I say it's like Shroud. But you don't use the resource the same way as Shroud. It's sort of just like you need to be at full to get in, and then once you're at full, it drains it. And then once you leave, you got to get it back up. And we'll talk a lot more about that later. But yeah, that's going to be important because the build revolves around getting that resource as fast as possible. And how you get the resource of Celestial Avatar is by hitting foes and by healing. So whenever you heal yourself or an ally or your pet, you will gain Celestial Avatar. And whenever you do damage, you will also. So you're gonna see later. But anyways, whenever you enter into Celestial Avatar, you will cleanse 13 conditions, which is pretty insane because that means it's a full cleanse every time you go into Celestial Avatar on a potentially 10-second cooldown. And you'll also, when you leave Celestial, so when you enter you cleanse everything, when you leave, you'll gain super speed and stealth. And that's also very important because after you leave Celestial Avatar, you're a little bit vulnerable for that amount of time that you can't use it again. So it allows you to be very slippery, and there's a lot of plays you can make because you can actually stealth your allies with Celestial Shadow. So you can make res plays or support your team by allowing them to disengage and reposition while in stealth. So very supportive so far. And then you have Ancient Seeds. This is the whole theme of the build, is Ancient Seeds. So whenever you hit a stun, daze, knockdown, or launch foe, you will summon roots around them. And this doesn't require you to be the one to daze them. So if, say I'm in a Zerg or something, and someone's out of position, all I need to do is spam my staff auto attack, which has a very reliable and long range auto attack, and the second that they get stunned, I'll immediately get the immobilized roots on them. So for example, my pet can also knock down, and there you go, I've got the immobilize, and this sets up a lot of not only damage because the roots will do long duration bleed, but also positioning is everything in World versus World. So if you're cut out of position, you're going to be targeted, and if you're targeted while immobilized, you can't dodge, so you're going to be dead. So it's very good at singling out and getting kills. And yeah, it's just an insane trait because there's so much CC on this build. It does have a 10-second ICD, so a lot of times you will actually hit someone who's dazed or whatever and it won't proc. So you kind of have to remember the ICD, but you have so much immobilize in this build on top of it that you can often carry through. So you proc the Ancient Seeds and then you get another immobilize for the next 5 seconds, and then by the time Ancient Seeds is up, they're still immobilized, and then you daze them again, and then you immob them again, and it can be a really long daze if they don't have a way to get out. So, or a long immob. But anyways, skirmishing, you're going to have swiftness and fury when you swap weapons. You don't really gain too much value from swiftness or from fury because there's no power on this build. The swiftness though is very important because there's really no other source of swiftness on this build other than super speed. And you're going to have Trapper's Expertise, which is very important because it will increase the duration of the conditions and boons applied by your traps, and it will give cripple as well on the offensive one. So I have Flame Trap, and it'll also reduce the cooldown of your traps, but I have Flame Trap that's going to increase the damage and give it a little bit more cover condies with the cripple. Generally they're going to be immobilized, so the cripple isn't that good, but as a cover condi it is good. So I take Flame Trap as my one trap. I do not take two traps because then you're lacking in stun breaks. So, and then you have Healing Spring, which gives you regen, and having really long duration regen is really nice because regen is giving you the Celestial Avatar resource, so that's important. And regen in general, because this build has so much healing power, gives you a lot of sustain. But then you have Hidden Barbs. Hidden Barbs gives you 33% more damage on your bleeds. You are using a lot of bleeds, even though it's not your only condi. You have plenty of poison and burning too, so it's not going to increase all of your damage by 33, but it's maybe like a 10 to 15% damage increase taking this trait, so it's really good. And you will have Quick Draw. So Quick Draw is a super fun and I think very powerful ability. So whenever you swap weapons, you gain Quick Draw for 5 seconds, and that will reduce the next weapon skill you use by 66%. Some of the very important ones to know are when you swap to Shortbow, you will do your Shortbow 2, and then it will come off cooldown almost immediately, and you can do a double Shortbow 2, and that'll give you a ton of poison, and that's your highest damage usage of that skill or of that trait. You can also do it with Concussion Shot for more CC, or with Quick Shot for more evades and mobility, or you can use it with your staff, and you can either give yourself more projectile reflect with Sublime Conversion, or you can give yourself more mobility and using it with the Ancestral Grace. And there's some combos that I'll show later that are really good, but the main one that is really good I'll show you guys is because how Ancestral Grace works is whenever you use that skill and it lands on an ally or it heals an ally, it will reduce the cooldown by 5 seconds. And if you also get Quick Draw on Ancestral Grace, you can get basically the whole cooldown back. So I'm going to show that right now. So I'm going to swap to Staff, use Ancestral Grace, and then I'm going to swap Pet so that my pet is on top of me right before the skill ends, so that I'll heal the pet, and then that'll reduce the cooldown by 5 seconds, and then I can use it again immediately. So I'm going to show that right here. So swap and swap pet, and there you go. It's 1 second cooldown. So that gives you a 1200 range mobility skill twice almost using that combo. So quick draw is really good, and that's not, that's just the tip of the iceberg with the amount of playmaking you have with that trait. So I really love that trait. Also, you can use it with Celestial Avatar. So one thing that's kind of weird is entering into Celestial Avatar will proc your quick draw, which can sometimes give you unintended skills that you don't want to do it, and then when you leave Celestial Avatar it'll be on cooldown, so you don't get it on the skill that you want. So you kind of have to be careful with that. But Celestial Avatar does make usage of quick draw a lot as well, so it's not terrible. And then in Wilderness Survival, you're going to have more endurance recovery, which is nice because whenever you dodge, you will gain protection for 2 seconds. And protection is a very strong boon. And it'll also heal you for every second you have protection. So each second is 240 healing. So you're going to heal for like 500 every time you dodge. And it's also going to give it to your pet. So you and your pet are regenning, which is giving you Celestial Avatar resource. It's giving you healing and damage reduction. Those are all really good for your sustain. Then when you use your heal skill, you're going to use Lesser Muddy Terrain, and that puts down basically a cripple, and that allows you to, first of all, put down slow and cripple, which are cover condies, and also it'll do a short immobilize, which you can follow into another combo. It's just kind of nice because it gives you condition cleanse, because it counts as a survival skill because of wilderness knowledge, which is whenever you use a survival skill, you cleanse 2 conditions and you gain fury, and then it reduces the cooldown of survival skills. So that's nice. And then you have refined toxins. So whenever you're above 75% HP, you'll poison the target, which a 5-second poison every 5 seconds is pretty good damage. It keeps the enemy from healing because poison reduces healing by 33%, and it really is nice for the attritive nature of this build because you're trying to out-sustain someone, and reducing their healing is really nice for that. It also gives it to your pet, so when your pet is above the health threshold, it'll also poison. So you want to stay around 75 or higher health and you'll do more damage. So the equipment I take is Apothecary gear, Apothecary staff, Trailblazer trinkets, Trailblazer shortbow. So basically you want condition damage on every single piece of gear you have, and you also want to have healing power, but you also want to have condition duration. So healing power is really important because you're a druid, right? It gives you a lot of your sustain, and you can heal others because of it, and it gives you more Celestial Avatar, so it's giving you a lot more options. Healing power is really necessary on druid, but there's no real stat that gives you healing power, condition damage, and condition duration, so you have to mix in a little bit of Trailblazer there, which is nice because that'll give you some of the vitality that you want as well. And I have 35% condition duration in staff and 53 in my shortbow, because basically the condition duration is important because your immobilize will be increased by that, and people can take a stat called condition duration reduction, and that can really counter this build because a lot of your immobilizes are pulsing. So they last for, say, like 1 second of immobilize, and then it will pulse that immobilize again if they're on top of the location. So because these as you can see, the immobilize keeps ticking higher and higher. So if they were to get out early, so for example, if they weren't to be immobilized for the entire duration, then they would miss the entire rest of the skill. So to get that duration higher means making your immobilizes land more reliably too. And also it just increases your damage, right? Because you're a condition damage build. So condition duration, really important for the immobilizes. And I will take the cleansing and energy sigil on my staff. So I take Apothecary on staff because you're going to be healing more often in staff, and you're going to do more condies in your shortbow, so that's why I have a differing set there. And cleansing energy is just kind of important because this is your like kiting weapon. Cleansing energy is a staple for those kind of weapon rolls. And then in shortbow, I have Absorption Malice. So Malice gives you condition duration, which allows you to get that condition of immobilize long enough to stick. And then Absorption is really important because this build has a lot of CC in it, and resistance is another counter to this build. So there's condition duration reduction, and then there's resistance. So if I interrupt someone, Absorption Sigil will steal 3 boons, and there's a high priority on resistance from that steal. So I can like immobilize someone, and then they can gain resistance, and then I can like interrupt them or something like that, and then immobilize them again so that it actually sticks. So the build is really reliant on immobilizes, so having absorption rather than more damage is good because it makes my damage more reliable. So that's why I take that. And you have lots of CC. You have Concussion Shot. You will have this Celestial Avatar 3 skill. So yeah, those are a lot of ways that you can get your CC. And also when you CC someone, you will immobilize them, right? Because of Ancient Seeds. So it kind of works out with the flow of the build very well, because you want to CC and then do damage usually. So it just works out very well. And then I take the holographic super cakes. These are from Super Adventure Box. You can use either baubles to buy them, or you can buy them off the TP. And this gives you health every second. So that's just more sustain and more Celestial Avatar proccing over time. So basically it makes it very reliable that you always have Celestial Avatar ready to use when it's off cooldown. And it also gives you endurance regeneration, which is going to give you more dodges for more survivability, which will also give you more protection, which is also more survivability, and then protection gives you healing. So that's more of like everything. So it's very good synergy. And then I'll just use any kind of tuning crystal because you just want to do more condi damage. So the skills. On Shortbow, pretty much all of the weapon skills are going to do more damage while you're flanking, which means either from behind or from the side. It's very lenient, so you're going to get it very often. And the auto attack is a very fast attack where it will give bleeds, and then the duration of those bleeds will be longer from behind, and it's like double damage from behind. So you want to be auto attacking people from behind if you can. And then the 2 skill is Poison Volley. This is kind of like a shotgun effect, and it'll do not double the damage from behind, but it'll definitely do more duration from behind. So you want to be in melee range to get that shotgun effect, as you know, to hit as many arrows as possible, and that will pierce. So you don't even need light on your feet to get that effect here. But yeah, it's just better to use this in melee range, because if you use it at range, then I only hit 4 there. I'd hit 5, or that might have even been 3 because I have the trait that gives me extra poison. So yeah, it would have been just 3 there. It'd be 6 otherwise. So yeah, just being as close as possible is important for landing that. And you can flank very easily because of immobilize, right? So you immobilize someone, and then you get behind them, and then you can flank them and just shoot your shortbow into their back and get extra damage from that. And then you have quick shot. So quick shot is an evade that will give you swiftness. It's pretty important because this skill is like one of those skills that didn't get balanced back when they changed all leap skills to not get affected by your movement speed. So the faster you're moving, the further you move with the quick shot. And there is super speed on this build when you leave your celestial avatar or use a trap. So you can like use a trap and then use quick shot and you move really far. So it's really good for getting your movement really high, and if you want a lot of mobility, you can use your your quick draw, right? And that'll give you a lot of ability to, you know, create distance. So that's a really good skill. And then you have crippling shot. So crippling shot does a cripple from the front and an immobilize when flanking, and it's also going to give your pet a buff that does 3 stacks of bleeding every time they hit, or it does 1 stack 3 times, and they're really long duration bleed. So you want to use crippling shot after you swap pets, because as you can see here, if I use crippling shot, it gives the buff, but then if I swap pets, the buff is gone. So you want to use it after you swap pets so that you get that extra bleeding. And then you have concussive shot. So this is a daze from the front and a stun from behind. And whether or not you land a daze or a stun, you can land immobilize afterwards because they're dazed from your ancient seeds. So it doesn't really matter because stun plus immobilize is essentially the same thing as daze plus immobilize. And that's one thing that's really strong with this build, is the combination of dazes and immobilize. Because daze means you can't use skills, and immobilize means you can't move or dodge. So that's essentially the same thing as a stun, except it's a little bit more complicated because you need to not only stun break, but you also need to Condi cleanse. So it's like a better stun. And yeah, it's just really good. So then in staff, you're going to have your auto attack. This is just a long range beam. You can use this skill very far away and get CA, but you don't want to use it too aggressively because you want to be kiting usually when you're in staff. So what I do is I start casting the staff on the target, and then I can face away and move in the direction I want. So you can do something like this, and you keep getting your CA, but you're also kiting because it doesn't require you to be looking while channeling the skill, only when you begin casting it. So it's just nice for kiting. And you have Astral Wisp. This isn't amazing, but it'll heal your allies around the target that you hit with it. I don't really use it that much. I'd rather just use an auto attack. But Ancestral Grace, we already talked about this, is a nice mobility skill, and it's a blast finisher, and it'll also give your pet protection, which means it'll heal the pet and give you more astral force. So this skill is really good to use in your healing spring, which is a water field, because it's a blast. It'll heal you for 1,700, and then it'll do a blast finisher, so it's like a 3,000-ish heal just to do that finisher combo. And yeah, we already talked about the combo where you can get it twice because you use it on your pet. And yeah. Next you have Vine Surge. Vine Surge is a really long range, doesn't require you to be facing the target immobilize. It's kind of slow moving and hard to land, but if it does land, it lands a nice 2-second immobilize, and it will remove all movement inhibiting conditions from you and allies that it passes through. So it's really good if like you swap to your staff and then you get immobilized, you just use Vine Surge and then you're out of there. Next is Sublime Conversion. This creates a wall that blocks projectiles and then converts them into healing projectiles. So not only does it prevent damage, but it also heals you. And it'll also give you regeneration when you walk through it, only one time. And it's also a water field. So if you, a lot of times when you're trying to kite away, what you'll do is you'll put your Sublime Conversion and then you'll use your 3 skill into it, and then you'll get a heal, and then you'll be behind the wall, which will be a safe zone for you. Then we have the utilities. So I take Healing Spring. It's a trap. It gives you a very long water field, and it pulses 2 condition cleanse every pulse for 10 seconds. And it gives you a ton of regen, which is going to give you healing and astral force. It's just really good, but you have to be standing in it to get that value. So when you're kiting, you don't get as much value. But if you can stand in it, then yeah, you get a lot of healing from it and a lot of cleanse. Then you have Glyph of Equality. So Glyph of Equality is a no animation, so you can use this while doing anything else. Daze in a 360 radius, so 360 is pretty far. So it hits this, and when you daze someone, right, you can basically enable your immobilize. So it's really good to use Glyph of Equality on staff because you generally don't have that many CCs available to you when you're in staff, and you can kind of like enable your immobilize with staff and then swap to Shortbow and immediately go in for the damage. So staff is a really good engage weapon because of this, because you can do stuff like the staff 3, right, and get into melee range like that, and then you can immediately daze and immob, so it's really nice like that. And then you have Flame Trap. So Flame Trap is just a nice little trap. It's the lowest cooldown trap. It's 12 seconds cooldown. There is the Poison Trap, which is a little bit more damage, but it's longer cooldown and it does poison, which I already have a lot of poison in this build. So I like having a lot of unique conditions, so it makes it harder for people to cleanse it. And I already have poison, so just stacking more poison means more gets cleansed. And then because it's such a low cooldown, I can also just use the trap for super speed and stealth more often. So there's more utility to it as well. And all traps are going to be unblockable. So if someone's blocking, I can use Flame Trap on them, and even like if they're blocking and they're immobilized, I can still do damage to them. And then you have Lightning Reflexes. This is just a really good stun break because it's an evade frame that gives you vigor for 10 seconds. More dodges means more sustain and everything else. And it'll remove immobilize. So you have a lot of ways to remove immobilize in this build, so you're very slippery. And there's a lot of immobilize in World versus World. So it's also a survival skill, so it'll remove immobilize and then remove 2 other conditions. And then finally Entangle. Entangle is a pretty wide range ability. It's 600 radius, and it will find 5 targets and put entangling roots on them, which will bleed them and immobilize them. And this is also unblockable. So if someone's blocking, you can use Entangle and then Flame Trap them, and it gives you quite a bit of potential to kill Guardians, Revenants, Warriors. So yeah, it's really good. And it's a survival skill, so it'll cleanse you 2 conditions if you really need it for that. So next is the pets. The pets I use are the Smoke Scale. The Smoke Scale gives you the Smoke Cloud. So if you do that trick I showed you with the Ancestral Grace twice, you can get 2 stacks of stealth there from the Smoke Field into the Blast Finisher. And that'll give you even more stealth if you need it. And just in general, the Smoke Scale is really nice because it enables your immobilize with its knockdown, and it'll help you to catch up to targets. Then you have the Iboga. The Iboga is the highest damage but also the squishiest pet, so you got to be careful with it, but it'll do Confusion and Torment, which is really good for you because the build doesn't really give those otherwise, and those are nice cover condies. And also just the fact that it's doing a lot of damage while they're immobilized. The Iboga can kind of just free cast on them and do all of its damage. So Iboga is really good. It also has a pull. So what you can do is you can tell the pet to return to you, put down a trap, and then use the Fang Grapple, and that'll pull them into your trap if there isn't a bug there with the golem there. And then they'll be in your trap, and because your trap is hitting them while they're CC'd, they'll get immobilized in your trap. So it's a really good combo to put down a trap and to Fang Grapple. And just in general, Iboga is a really strong pet. But as I said, it is very squishy. So you got to be careful of that. So Celestial Avatar. When you go into Celestial Avatar, you will cleanse all the conditions from yourself, and you will be able to stay in it for 15 seconds and use a bunch of skills. So your 2 skill is a seed that will cleanse 3 conditions from anyone in the seed when it ends, and blind. The 3 skill is a very good daze for interrupting, and it heals as well. And the 3 skill can be used in the 2 skill for an extra Condi cleanse because it's a light field. And then you also can use it as a very long daze, and it's a long range daze. So you can use it to prevent people from rezzing before you can get in there, or you can just peel for your allies by healing them and dazing people around them. And I often like to use the 3 skill with quick draw because that gives you a lot of daze, and then you can use it like 4 seconds later, so you just disable people for so long. The 4 skill is just kind of like a pulsing heal. I generally don't use this unless I need the healing more than I need the cleansing or the daze. But if you've used those already, then yeah, I go into the 4 skill to heal. And then finally is the 5 skill, which is Sublime Conversion, and this does a pulsing slow and cripple, and then if foes are near it when it finishes, it will summon entangling roots around them, which will immobilize them, but they won't deal damage. So how I often use Celestial Avatar is I'll go in, I'll do the 3 skill, and then that will daze them. If I have my Ancient Seeds off cooldown, I'll use the 5 skill because that's the only thing that does damage, and that'll proc Ancient Seeds on them, which will keep them in range of the natural convergence, and then they'll get hit by the second immobilize from natural convergence, which will put a lot of conditions on them and stuff. And then by then the 3 skill is probably off cooldown, so what I'll do is I'll use the 2 skill into the 3 skill, because the 2 skill is just a really fast cast time, and you can get extra cleanse and stuff from that. And then the 3 skill gives you a daze again while they're immobilized. So they're immobilized for a really long time, and then they're also going to be dazed for a long time. So it's like a really long disable, right? Because the daze and immobilize combo is basically a stun. So how it'll look like when I usually go into CA is I get the quick draw proc on 3, and then I go into 5, get the immob, and then I'll immediately 2 and then 3, and if I need more healing I'll 4 and use the 2 again if I'm about to leave, and then I just leave. So that's 6 cleanse there, or actually 7 cleanse because I did a combo finisher, and a ton of immobilize and daze. One thing you have to watch out for with your Celestial Avatar skills is that they can't really be cancelled very easily. So when I want to use the 4 skill, but I'm stuck using the 5 skill, you need to basically stow the cast. So I can use the 5 here, and then I stow, and then I go into the 4, and then I want to stow the 4 because I don't want to use it that long. So yeah, you want to stow the 4 and the 5 skills because they have like a pulsing effect that you don't always want to get the, see out their whole duration. So in this 1v2, I'm versus a Sikkim Ranger and a Dragon Hunter, which is very dangerous because the Dragon Hunter can pull me and sacrifice my positioning, and the Sikkim Ranger just does tons of damage. So I'm going to use this small hill to avoid the ranger while I try to deal with the dragon hunter. You always want to separate the enemy when you're outnumbered so that you can kind of like simulate a fairer fight. But I land a really nice daze on the dragon hunter to prevent them from pressuring me, and I get a nice immob into my flame trap using the glyph of equality. I put down the sublime conversion to survive, but then I try to go forward too much and take a lot of damage from the Sycam Ranger. So I try to heal myself with Celestial Avatar, but I'm really low and I'm forced to pour it out into my healing area and just keep line of sighting. I could die at any moment now, so I'm just dodging off cooldown, trying to spam all my heals here. I know that the Dragon Hunter is rezzing itself now, so I need to handle that. What I should have done is just put my pet on the Dragon Hunter, but I was panicking because the Sycam Ranger was doing so much damage, and I'm not really amazing with pet control, so I didn't do that. So the Dragon Hunter is actually going to res. And here's another thing, like I have the Ranger and the Dragon Hunter down, but I try to keep both of them down. And that's a little bit too greedy. I should just go for one and make sure that one dies so that I can just 1v1 the next one. But because I greed and I basically try to chase two things at one time, I almost make a really big mistake and allow both of them to kind of like get rezzed. So I decided eventually to go for the Ranger and just finish that, because that is the more scary 1v1. And the Dragon Hunter, I can easily beat that in a 1v1 afterwards because I have too much sustain. But yeah, you don't want to be chasing two hares. You want to be focusing on one so that you don't get outplayed by your own greed. This is a 1v3 versus 2 Revenants and a Ranger, a Longbow Ranger. And they've been chasing me for a while now. And I'm just trying to kite away and survive long enough until I can test their patience, really. And I know that the Power Rev is going to be chasing me the hardest because they have the Shiro stance. And they're also the squishiest one. So I'm going to be focusing them while I am trying to kite the others. And I land some really nice damage by kiting around the pillars and putting down my traps so that their AoE will basically tax some of their health as I'm kiting. But the Revenant is staying on me very hard, so I have to play super safe right now. I have to even use my lightning reflexes as a dodge, which means I'm really far behind. So I just need to play super safe right now. Don't really care about the kill. The only reason I'm turning around is just to immobilize that Revenant, just to get them off me. Not really focusing on damage. I can get the immobilize with the daze, but then afterwards I need to back off. So I'm playing super safe. I could die at any moment if I get hit, so I'm using everything I have as soon as it comes off. And I get my Celestial Avatar off here, so I try to heal as much as possible. And I daze them, and then I do a little bit of a juke there, changing direction after I go into stealth. But the Rev has the port, right, so they can immediately jump on me. I get a nice immobilize into my Flame Trap, which pressures them quite a bit. And I'm able to use my Ancestral Grace to get out of there. But as we know, the Rev is going to be on top of me again because of the Shiro. So you got to use stealth a little bit better because they can just port on you. So the Rev is still here, and the rest of them actually fell down. So I try to, this is my time to get the kill because I've singled them out by themselves. And I'm doing really good right now. I'm at full HP, and they're very low and about to die. So the rest of them come back up, and I have to resume my kiting playstyle again. And I play a little bit greedy here, going for a natural convergence. And I lose a lot of cooldowns because of that. And the Revenant actually lands an immob on me, so I use my Staff 4 to get out of that. And I'm just trying to kite and use terrain to split them up. I get a nice immob into poison there on the Power Rev, but I get pulled off by the Condi Rev, who has been spamming chills on me this whole time. So I'm in an actually pretty good position here because the terrain allows me to be above them and they can't hit me with everything. But I get pulled off and knocked back and tons of Condis on me, and I'm getting pew-pewed, so I end up dying. But I did pretty well for, you know, being against 3 really hard DPS classes. So the potential of the build for surviving is really good. And yeah, if you like this build, give it a like and subscribe for more videos. And of course, comment down below what you guys think.